mortgage rates, because I can tell you just from seeing the numbers myself, from going between the rate they were offering me at Quicken Loans, which was a whole point mortgage rate percentage higher than the one I ended up getting with my local bank, it makes a significant difference in what you can afford. Because there's the price that you see on Zillow or the price you see on paper that says this is what I'm paying for the house, but what you're actually paying is typically quite a bit more than that, because over the course of the mortgage you have to pay the interest. And that's the downside of having a mortgage. That's the downside of not having an extra spare $200,000 or $300,000, is that you have to pay for their service by using it over the course of typically 15 or 30 year tenure. 15 years means a much higher mortgage. It's also a higher risk. So not as many people, especially first time home buyers, are able to afford that. We have a 30-year mortgage, and I think that's kind of the typical. You can do things like spending an extra, you can pay, like, make like an extra payment each month or pay a little extra towards your principal. Because you have principal, you have interest. Like the principal is the base cost, like the actual deposit on the loan. And then you have your interest, which is, just stuff that you're going to have to pay as the length of that loan continues. And it's the same thing on student loans. I'm sure you probably saw some of that stuff. That was a whole other thing, which I'm glad we haven't really had to pay on those since 2020.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's been a big because like I was like, oh, I don't have to pay on student loans until who knows when. Cool, I'll buy a house.
There we go.
But like, see, and then there's what's called escrow, which is basically this bank account that a certain portion of your mortgage gets put into, that at the end of the year that all gets taken out for your total premium for like your homeowner's insurance, for example. Um, and that's usually decided with like an external, like I don't know, like for me, I just use my insurance company I already used for at the time rental insurance and like my car insurance. And there's usually companies will get you with like, oh, well, if you already have us with these things, we'll give you a discount on this one. For me personally, my father was a veteran, so I had the ability to go use USAA. They're really great. If you can get in, however, uh, they're really good, because homeowners insurance is another difficult thing that you have to worry about. Like, oh, you have to weigh as, is it cheaper versus are they actually going to like cover you when you need them? And, paying higher premiums a month might be something you also have to consider, which is that homeowners insurance. I mean, that's what another thing that will elevate your monthly mortgage costs when you're comparing it to like say rent, because it's included in that, and that gets put in your escrow account. And I think for the first year, it's actually part of your closing costs typically, because that's another thing about offers being made. Once you actually do make an offer and it gets accepted, is that you're talking about, okay, between the buyer and the seller, who's going to cover what percentage of closing costs? Because there's a whole cost associated with transferring a deed to someone else. You have a whole closing, they have a title company, which is not the same as your loan company. The title company is who's going to go and say, that's where you're going to go and close the deal on the day that they hand you the keys. The house is yours. Um, and that's a whole process, and there will be other closing costs associated, or there aren't necessarily closing costs, because like what ended up happening is, I think that when we finally got this offer on this house, um, once we got all of our affairs in order and they accepted our offer, we you go under what happens, and you'll see this on Zillow. They have like a house will go under contract, which basically means that until that contract is voided, which is usually like a month later, or the completion of the contract, anyone else who's making an offer on the house, I mean, there would have to be a breach of contract for one party or the other to pull out of it. So you're kind of in this like, it's kind of like a period of exclusivity with you and the seller. And they I mean, there are contingencies and loopholes and legalities you can get out of it. And typically one of the most common ones is like if someone is moving from like another state, or they already have a house, and they say, okay, I want to put forth this offer on this house, but there's a contingency. I'm trying to sell my house in this other state too. I don't know if it's going to sell in time, but I can't handle two mortgages at once. So I'd love to go forward with this, presuming I can also go forward with that. And that's a huge issue. I'm glad I didn't worry about. I need to sell my house. I'm going to move into another house, and they might have like specific time strictures that are like, I have to be here at a certain time because I'm going to start a job. I have to be here at a certain time because my kids need to start school. Uh, there's just a ton of different things that could be that. And so you can have certain like emergency exit buttons for your contract, but the double-edged sword of that is that you go and present all these contingencies to a seller who really wants to sell their house and really wants to get the most money for it. They're going to say like, this looks like a less desirable offer whenever there's someone over here offering cash to buy my house tomorrow. Why should I? Why should I care? Um, Typically, in that under contract period, you're going to do things like your homeowner's inspection, any kinds of like outstanding, like if there's something that you really need to look at, like structural issues. Um, there's usually like a timeline. Like the realtor made it really easy. They're like, okay, here's when you have this and this and this and this done by, so that you can um, you can have it checked off. One of the things is getting the appraisal done, which the appraisal is kind of like another home inspection, but you pay for that at your own expense to basically have someone come in and investigate things in your house. And that person, I think, is like a representative of your bank who will say, like, this house is worth as much money or more or less. And so we're willing to cover this much in terms of like upfronting for a mortgage. Um, so it can be a good thing or a bad thing. For us, it was a good thing because the house on our house had dropped because again, they the people who were selling it were just not the smartest. Um, they tried selling without a realtor. They have a house at the end of the street. People don't see it. They don't come by here often. So it sat on the market for 4 years. So it dropped to a significantly lower price than all the other houses in our neighborhood because nobody knew it existed. And whenever a house has been on the market for longer than a few months, that starts sending red flags to even the buyers saying, what's wrong with this house? What's the deal? What's going on? And especially like in Birmingham, it's really hard to find flat land. Everything is hills. So there's oftentimes a lot of like structural issues that you're like, what's going on? I'm scared. Am I going to buy this house and it's going to like slide down the hill? Um, I certainly saw some houses like that. I was like, I can't believe they're selling it like this. This is crazy. Some were just like really scary. It was like there was one I saw, it was like basically like a tree house. It was like on these giant stilts, keeping it on edge with this really steep hill. Somebody did end up buying it though, but I did not feel safe in the house. But um, yeah, so you'll go under contract. You'll go through this checklist of things you need to do. There's the appraisal, there's a homeowner's inspection. And technically speaking, you don't have to do any of those things. And the seller's probably going to like you more if you don't do those things. Like, hey, no questions asked. I'm selling them this house, which may or may not be stable or good. But, for yourself and your investment, it's best that you do that during that period because once you sign the contract and the house is yours, it's your problem. Um, with the homeowner's inspection, they have like you can submit a list of things that you want them to fix before you move in, and that can be something they sign for. And they have to sign for it because we made a mistake. So, for example, on the back porch on the lower deck, there was a hot tub, and the sellers, again, not the best of company, they told us, oh yeah, it works. And I was like, okay, well that's great. We get a hot tub with our house. Awesome. And they're like, well, it was broken, but we fixed it because the last people who went under contract with us and backed out of the contract, they specifically asked us to get it fixed up. So it's already fixed, ready for you to go. We get out there, we try to start it up like after we'd already bought the house, just taking them at their word. That hot tub was not working at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was like I don't know if like they sabotaged it or something, or just made it absolutely not working because they didn't like some of the things that we were requesting of them before we moved in. Um, it was just complete. It was just garbage at that point. We couldn't turn it on. We couldn't get it working. We tried, but like there were some of the internal parts were actually destroyed. So I was like, okay, fine.
Wow.
Yeah, if we had gotten them to sign for that, saying they were contractually obligated to have it fixed and show that it's working, like we could have done that. But they were some odd folks. I don't really know. And that's the thing. That's another thing that's really important about having a realtor is that they're kind of the person, the go between, because these talks and these negotiations can get pretty serious. This is a huge investment, and they don't want you going and people getting like threatening with each other or violent, something like that. So like I didn't even see the sellers at all until the day we closed, and then it was like, any last minute advice? um, and you know, but so yeah, you go through all the checklists, you get your house appraisal by a certain time, you get your homeowner's inspection, that's typically when you line up your deals, like part of the closing cost for us, or part of the deal we got for the closing is that they were going to pay for our first year of home warranty. It's not the same thing as homeowners insurance. Home warranty is usually used to cover things like internal appliances and um, just utilities, things that can break in the first year. And they were just going to cover it for our first year, which is great because in the end, in my experience, getting a home warranty is not really worth renewing because they kind of similar to homeowners insurance. This is just more of the stuff in the weeds. They're going to try whatever they can to not cover something, and they'll charge you like a premium of like $75 just to send someone out to come look at a problem. It's not worth it, in my opinion. I mean, we might have not picked a good one. We got like American Home Shield or whatever. Um, it wasn't a good experience, and we just didn't have anything else break that we really felt like it was necessary to spend another like $650 for another year just for them to charge us another $75 per visit for something that they might not cover because we had like some plumbing issues when we got here and they're like, oh yeah, this thing's gonna be broken, we're gonna need to bust out a wall, and then we're gonna need to get another contractor in here to fix that wall. And we ended up doing a lot of stuff ourselves, which, by the way, that's a big thing when you have homeownership is if you can figure out a way to do it yourself, that the things that you're going to be paying a lot for, like repairs in your house or bringing stuff up to date, stuff like that, is for the labor.
Hmm.
So you're going to want to see if you can find YouTube tutorials, anything, and fix it yourself because you're going to be saving thousands of dollars instantly. And I mean, it's going to be putting blood, sweat, and tears into it because it is your house. It's a big investment. But anyway, so you get all those things in order, and then let's see, homeowners inspection, the appraisal, and like certain parts of that are also like delegated to be like you pay your title company because it becomes part of the closing costs. Like you pay them versus you pay the company you're hiring to do the inspection, doing the appraisal, stuff like that. And you have to like forward the documents along, and there's like people checking in with you like every couple of days. And then there's a formal agreement you'd sign between you and the seller. It's like, okay, we saw this thing that came from the homeowner's um, inspection, and we want you to fix it. Um, but you also have to delegate, like, okay, are they going to fix all of these things? We have to be careful about how much we ask for, because typically speaking, on the way out, when they might see you asking too many things as a reason for them to say, oh, you're not serious about this contract, we want to pull out. It's that stressful. It's like, no, I finally got a house offer, it was accepted, I really want to live here, but this is unacceptable. Or like, for example, my house was built in 1987, so like we have a back deck and there's steps that go up to it. And the code in 1987 was that you had these things called streamers, I think, that are like the supporting boards that go underneath the stairs, like at a diagonal. And in 1987, you only needed two of those. But now, as per more recent codes, to bring it up to code, you had to have one in the middle. another thing that it's important to consider is like, okay, we need to consider which changes that we want them to make are most important so that we can get our house appraised. Because if someone comes by and appraises and says, hey, there's this health hazard or a real liability, this might not be as worthy of an investment for us um, to back buying of this house. So that's a whole other thing, you got to get all of that stuff in order, and then you're projecting typically the closing date's about a month out. So it was great. It was around my birthday in early June last year that I was like the best birthday gift ever. Someone accepted my offer, and then we closed on July